A drink of water for the tribal leader. Then he offered me marriage to his two beautiful daughters. The sun was high in the sky, beating down mercilessly on the endless stretch of dry, dusty land. The traveler had been walking for hours, his water bottle long emptied, his throat parched, and his legs growing heavy with exhaustion. Each step felt harder than the last, as if the earth itself was trying to hold him back. The heat shimmered in the distance, creating illusions of lakes and shadows that vanished whenever he approached. He had underestimated the journey, thinking it would be simple, but the desert was proving to be far more challenging than he had imagined. His lips were cracked, and his mouth was so dry that swallowing had become painful. He tried to focus on the horizon, hoping to see something, anything, that would bring relief. Dust and sand clung to his clothes and skin, and sweat poured down his back, soaking through his shirt. The traveler's mind wandered to thoughts of home, where water was plentiful and the air was cooler. He remembered the simple pleasure of drinking a glass of cold water without a second thought. Now, every drop he had left felt like treasure, and he had none left at all. As he stumbled forward, the traveler spotted something unusual. Amid the barren landscape, there was a small cluster of structures, barely visible from a distance. They were simple huts made of wood and straw, with smoke curling lazily from small chimneys. Around the huts he noticed people moving about, tending to small gardens or carrying water in clay pots. It was a village, and it seemed almost hidden, like a secret oasis that had appeared just when he needed it most. His heart leapt with hope, and he quickened his steps, the thought of water giving him a sudden burst of energy. As he approached, the villagers noticed him. Their expressions were a mixture of curiosity and caution. They had seen travelers before, but not many ventured this far into their territory. A few children stopped their play, watching him with wide eyes, while the adults whispered to each other, trying to decide how to react. The traveler raised his hands in a gesture of peace, hoping they would understand that he meant no harm. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words came out as a dry croak. He needed water more than he needed anything else. At the center of the village, standing slightly apart from the others, was the tribal leader. He was a tall man with a dignified presence, wearing simple yet elegant clothing that marked his authority. His eyes were sharp yet kind, observing the traveler carefully. There was an air of wisdom about him, the kind of presence that made people naturally respect him. The traveler, exhausted and desperate, felt a mix of relief and nervousness. He had no idea what to expect, but he knew he had to ask for help. With a shaky voice, he spoke the only words that mattered at that moment. "Please, may I have some water?" The plea was simple, honest, and filled with desperation. The villagers watched silently, waiting to see how the leader would respond. For a moment it seemed as if time had slowed. The traveler's heart pounded, unsure whether they would turn him away or offer the help he so desperately needed. Then the leader stepped forward. His movements were calm and deliberate, and there was a softness in his expression that reassured the traveler. Breath. Without a word, he motioned to one of the villagers, who quickly brought a clay cup filled with cool, clear water. The traveler took it with trembling hands, drinking slowly at first, savoring every drop, then more eagerly as the relief began to wash over him. The water was like magic, reviving his tired body and clearing his foggy mind. He felt as if he had been given a second chance, and he could not stop the gratitude that welled up inside him. The leader watched quietly, his eyes still sharp but kind. After ensuring the traveler had drunk enough to feel a little better, he spoke in a calm voice, asking simple questions about where the traveler had come from and why he was in such a desperate situation. The traveler answered, recounting the long journey, the harsh sun, and the endless miles of barren land. The leader listened carefully, nodding occasionally, showing that he understood and that he valued the traveler's honesty. As the traveler regained his strength, he looked around the village. It was a small but vibrant place, filled with people who seemed connected not just by proximity, but by trust and respect. Children played near the huts, laughing and shouting, while adults worked together, sharing tasks and responsibilities. The traveler noticed that everyone seemed to know their place, yet treated each other with kindness. Even in this remote and harsh environment, there was a sense of harmony and community that fascinated him. The leader invited the traveler to sit under a shaded area near the center of the village. The traveler accepted, still feeling weak but eager to learn more about these people who had shown him such unexpected kindness. The leader spoke softly, asking about the traveler's journey, his experiences, and the challenges he had faced. It was not just small talk. It was a way of understanding the traveler's character, his resilience, and his heart. The traveler realized that this simple gesture of offering water was also a gesture of trust and respect, something that went far beyond mere hospitality. As the sun began to lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the village, the traveler felt a deep sense of relief. He had arrived at a place where he was safe, nourished, and, surprisingly, welcomed. The exhaustion that had weighed so heavily on him began to lift, replaced by a growing curiosity about the people around him and the leader who had extended such unexpected kindness. For the first time in days, he felt hope. The kind that comes not from imagination, but from the reality of human generosity. The traveler realized that this encounter might change more than just his immediate circumstances. In this simple act of receiving water, he saw the potential for connection, understanding, and perhaps even friendship. The leader had not only provided for his physical needs, but had also shown that respect, observation, and careful judgment were as valuable as the water itself. It was a lesson in humility, trust, and the power of kindness in a world that could often feel harsh and unforgiving. As night began to fall, the traveler was offered a place to rest. He accepted, grateful not just for the comfort but for the feeling of being part of something larger than himself. The village, with its simple huts and hard-working people, had become more than just a stopping point. It was a place of learning, reflection, and quiet wonder. The traveler fell asleep that night thinking about the day's events, the generosity of a stranger, and the strange, beautiful way life could unfold when one humble act led to another. He did not yet know what the coming days would bring, but he felt certain that his encounter with the tribal leader was the beginning of something extraordinary. A simple drink of water had opened a door to new experiences, new relationships, and a story that was only just beginning. In that small village in the middle of the desert, amid the harsh sun and endless sand, the traveler discovered not just water, but humanity, kindness, and the first spark of an unforgettable journey. After a night of rest, the traveler woke to the sounds of the village stirring. The sun had barely risen, casting a golden glow over the small huts and the dusty paths that wound between them. Children were already awake, running barefoot across the sand, their laughter ringing clear and light in the cool morning air. Adults moved quietly, carrying baskets of fruit, tending small gardens, and preparing simple meals. The traveler stretched, feeling the lingering stiffness in his muscles from the long journey, but also a deep sense of gratitude for having reached this place. As he stepped outside, the tribal leader was already there, watching over the village with a calm, steady presence. The leader's gaze met the traveler's, and with a slight nod, he invited him to walk with him through the village. The traveler felt both nervous and honored. There was something in the leader's eyes, a mixture of curiosity and careful assessment, that made him feel both welcomed and observed. As they walked together, the leader spoke in a gentle tone, asking the traveler about his journey, the lands he had crossed, and the experiences he had had along the way. The traveler told his story, recounting the long days of walking under the scorching sun, the nights spent under the open sky, and the many small challenges he had faced alone. He spoke of the loneliness that came with traveling far from home, the way the desert seemed endless and unforgiving, and how he had relied on his own determination to keep moving forward.
The leader listened patiently, nodding occasionally, but never interrupting.
There was a quiet understanding in the way he paid attention, as if he could see not just the traveler's words but the effort, resilience, and honesty behind them. As they continued walking, the traveler began to notice more about the village. Every task seemed to be shared among the people. Mothers helped one another with small children. Elders guided the younger ones, and even the children took part in small chores. There was a sense of harmony that the traveler had rarely seen before. He realized that this was not just a village, but a community built on trust, respect, and cooperation. It was a system that worked quietly, without the need for loud rules or constant supervision. And it fascinated him deeply. At one point, the leader stopped near a small well, the same one the traveler had drawn water from the day before. He gestured toward the well and asked the traveler how it felt to be welcomed here after such a long and exhausting journey. The traveler paused, searching for the right words. "It feels like I have found a place where people understand kindness," he said finally. "I have never experienced such generosity from strangers before." "I am grateful beyond words." The leader smiled faintly, a look of approval and quiet satisfaction crossing his face. Later in the morning, the leader introduced the traveler to some of the villagers more formally. He encouraged the traveler to sit with the women as they prepared food, and to observe the men as they worked in the fields and with the animals. The traveler accepted eagerly, wanting to learn more about the daily life and customs of this community. He noticed small things, how the women worked together silently, passing utensils and ingredients with practiced ease, how the men moved with confidence, yet showed respect to one another, and how even in the smallest interactions there was a sense of consideration, patience, and care. During this time, the leader kept a close but unobtrusive eye on the traveler. He was assessing not in a judgmental way, but to understand the character of this outsider who had wandered into their midst. The traveler, unaware of the careful observation, continued to show his natural qualities: honesty, humility, and a willingness to learn. He asked questions about the traditions, the land, and the ways of the villagers, showing curiosity without arrogance. He offered to help with tasks, attempting to carry baskets of water or tend to small chores, even though his body was still weak from the journey. The leader noticed something else too: the traveler's respect for the village's customs. When a child ran past, the traveler stepped aside quietly instead of startling them. When an elder spoke, he listened intently, without interrupting or questioning their authority. The leader recognized that this was someone who did not just speak politely, but acted with genuine respect, a quality highly valued in their culture. Over the course of the morning, the traveler slowly became a part of the village's rhythm, moving from one task to another with quiet determination. As midday approached, the leader invited the traveler to sit with him under the shade of a large tree in the village center. He offered fresh fruit and cool water, more than the traveler had ever imagined possible after the long days without hydration. They sat together in silence for a few moments, watching the village move around them. The leader then spoke, asking the traveler about his family, his upbringing, and the values that guided his life.
The traveler answered honestly, sharing his hopes, struggles, and dreams.
He spoke of honesty, integrity, and the importance of helping others, even when it was difficult or inconvenient. The leader nodded thoughtfully at each answer. There was a depth to his observation, a careful weighing of words and actions. The traveler realized that he was not just being spoken to, but understood, in a way that went beyond surface-level conversation. The leader's eyes, calm yet penetrating, seemed to look directly into the traveler's heart, as if assessing not just what he said, but who he truly was. The traveler felt both nervous and honored, sensing that his words were making an impression far greater than he had imagined. After some time, the leader stood and gestured for the traveler to follow him. They walked toward the outskirts of the village, where the leader introduced him to the surrounding land. He spoke of the challenges of living in such an arid region, of how the villagers learned to survive and thrive despite the harsh environment. He explained how water was precious, how the land required careful attention, and how the community depended on each individual's contribution.
The traveler listened intently, realizing that this was not just survival. It was a way of life, shaped by respect, responsibility, and wisdom passed down through generations. During the walk, the traveler also met the leader's daughters, Breath. They were standing nearby, assisting in small tasks, and their presence was immediately noticeable. They moved with grace and confidence, yet carried themselves humbly, showing respect to both their father and the villagers. The traveler could see that they were not only beautiful, but intelligent, capable, and kind. The leader watched the traveler's reaction carefully, as though observing whether he understood and respected their qualities. There was a quiet tension, a sense that something important was unfolding, though the traveler did not yet realize it. As the afternoon sun began to soften, the traveler and the leader returned to the village center. The leader invited the traveler to sit again, and this time the conversation turned to values, character, and what it meant to be a person of honor. The leader spoke of how actions revealed more than words, how kindness and respect were the true markers of character, and how observing behavior over time gave insight into a person's heart. The traveler nodded, understanding that these were lessons not just for him, but for anyone who wished to live harmoniously with others. By the time the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the dusty paths, the traveler had learned much more than he had anticipated. He had seen the rhythm of life in the village, the strength of its community, and the wisdom of its leader. Most importantly, he had begun to understand the depth of respect and trust that existed here, and he felt a growing connection to these people who had welcomed him so openly, despite being strangers.
That evening, as the village gathered for a simple meal, the traveler noticed the leader watching him with a quiet approval.
There was no need for words. He understood that the leader had been assessing him throughout the day, observing how he interacted, how he respected customs, and how he carried himself. The traveler felt a mixture of humility and pride, knowing that he had earned a degree of trust simply through honesty, effort, and kindness. As the stars appeared in the night sky, twinkling over the quiet village, the traveler reflected on the day's events. What had started as a desperate search for water had transformed into a journey of understanding, connection, and discovery. He realized that the small act of receiving kindness had opened doors he had never imagined, and that his life was about to change in ways he could not yet predict. He fell asleep that night with a sense of hope and anticipation, ready for whatever the next day might bring, unaware that the next step would lead to a surprising and life-altering encounter. The next morning the traveler woke feeling stronger, as if the village itself had restored a part of him that the long journey had worn away. He stepped outside to see the sun rising slowly over the horizon, bathing the small huts and dusty paths in a soft golden light. Children were already awake, playing quietly, their laughter mingling with the morning breeze. The traveler felt a sense of peace he had not known in weeks. The desert, which had once seemed endless and harsh, now felt like it had led him to this hidden oasis for a reason. The tribal leader was waiting for him near the central tree, the same place where they had spent hours talking the day before. But he greeted the traveler with a calm nod, inviting him to walk with him through the village once again. Today, however, there was a different air about the leader, something more deliberate, as if he intended to share not just lessons of life, but something far more personal. The traveler, unaware of what was coming, followed closely, eager to continue learning and observing the ways of this community. As they walked, the leader asked about the traveler's past experiences, his hopes and his dreams. The traveler answered honestly, sharing stories of his life before the journey, the struggles he had faced, and the lessons he had learned. There was a quiet attentiveness in the leader's eyes that made the traveler feel as if he were being truly seen, not just for what he had accomplished, but for the kind of person he was. The leader's presence carried a mix of authority and wisdom, and the traveler felt both nervous and honored to be in his company. After a while, the leader stopped near a small garden on the outskirts of the village. There, two young women were tending the plants. They moved gracefully, their hands gentle yet skilled, caring for the earth with patience and precision. The traveler immediately noticed their beauty, but what struck him more was the calm confidence in the way they worked. They were focused, intelligent, and clearly respected by everyone around them. The leader observed the traveler's gaze, noticing both curiosity and admiration in his expression. The leader spoke softly, introducing the young women as his daughters. He told the traveler their names and shared a little about their lives, how they had grown up in this village, learning its customs, values, and responsibilities. They were not only beautiful but also wise and kind, respected by all who knew them.
The traveler felt a mixture of awe and humility.
He understood that these were people of great character, and he sensed that the leader was preparing to reveal something extraordinary. They all returned to the village center where the leader asked the traveler to sit with him once again. The daughters stayed nearby, assisting in small tasks but keeping an attentive eye on the conversation. The leader began to speak in a measured tone, his words carrying weight and intention. He spoke about the traveler's journey, his behavior, and the respect he had shown toward the villagers. He noted the traveler's humility, kindness, and willingness to learn. It was clear that the leader had been observing him carefully, assessing not just what he said, but how he acted in every situation. Then, the leader paused, looking directly at the traveler. His voice, calm and steady, carried a surprising message. You have shown respect, courage, and honesty. These are qualities that are rare and valuable in this world. Because of this, I wish to offer you something most extraordinary. The traveler's heart skipped a beat, unsure of what the leader meant. He had expected kindness, guidance, or friendship, but the words that followed left him speechless. The leader continued, his tone unwavering. I offer you the chance to marry my two daughters. This is a tradition in our tribe, a way to honor those we trust and respect deeply. It is not an offer made lightly, and it comes only after careful observation of your character. Breaths. The traveler felt a whirlwind of emotions, shock, disbelief, and confusion mixed with a sense of honor. He had never imagined that a simple drink of water could lead to such a proposition, and yet here he was, faced with a decision that could change his life entirely. The daughters remained calm, watching the traveler's reaction carefully. There was no pressure in their eyes, only quiet expectation and a gentle curiosity. They were accustomed to their father's way of making decisions, understanding that such offers were rooted in respect, trust, and cultural values. The traveler realized that this was not about appearance or wealth. It was about character, integrity, and the way he had conducted himself in the village. For a long moment the traveler could not speak. He thought about the journey that had brought him here. The harsh desert, the thirst that had driven him to the village, the kindness of the leader, and the warmth of the villagers. He reflected on the values he held dear, on honesty, respect, and the importance of understanding others. This offer, though unexpected, felt connected to every choice he had made along the way. Yet, it was also overwhelming, a responsibility far greater than anything he had faced before.
The leader spoke again, sensing the traveler's hesitation.
This is not just about marriage, he said gently. It is about becoming part of our community, embracing our way of life, and honoring the bonds that hold us together. Speak. You will be welcomed, respected, and guided, but the choice is yours. We ask only for honesty and integrity in your decision. The traveler felt the weight of the words. It was a decision not only about him, but about joining a family, a tribe, and a way of life that was entirely new and unfamiliar. The traveler spent the afternoon observing the daughters more closely. He saw their intelligence, their patience, and their kindness. They laughed together as they worked,
shared quiet conversations, and moved with a grace that reflected both discipline and compassion. He realized that any decision he made would affect not only himself, but these two remarkable individuals whose lives were intertwined with the leader's guidance and the tribe's traditions. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the village, the traveler sought a quiet place to think. He walked to the edge of the village, looking out over the arid landscape that had brought him here. He thought about his life before the journey, the values he held dear, and the responsibilities that this offer would entail. It was a moment of deep reflection, a turning point that demanded honesty, courage, and clarity of heart. The leader approached him quietly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Take your time," he said. "This is not a decision to be made hastily. Observe, learn, and reflect. We will wait for your answer." The traveler nodded, grateful for the patience and understanding. He realized that the leader's offer was not a test of impulse, but a test of character. A chance to show wisdom, respect, and thoughtfulness in the face of an extraordinary opportunity. Over the next few days, the traveler spent more time with the daughters, learning about their daily routines, their hopes, and their dreams. They spoke of the land, of the traditions that had shaped their lives, and of the responsibilities that came with being part of the tribe. The traveler shared his own experiences, his thoughts on life, and the lessons he had learned along his journey. There was mutual respect, a growing bond, and a sense of understanding that transcended words. Through these interactions, the traveler realized that the offer was not simply about marriage. It was about joining a community, embracing a way of life, and honoring the values that the tribe held dear. He saw that the daughters were not just figures of beauty, but individuals of strength, intelligence, and compassion. The leader's offer was a recognition of his character, a rare honor that demanded both gratitude and thoughtful consideration. By the end of the week, the traveler felt a deep sense of connection to the village, the leader, and the daughters. He understood that this decision would shape the course of his life, presenting both challenges and opportunities that he had never imagined. But yet, he also felt a sense of readiness, a quiet confidence that came from honesty, humility, and the willingness to embrace new experiences with an open heart. As the sun set on the village once again, the traveler knew that the next step would be crucial. He had been offered not only the chance to marry the daughters, but also the chance to become part of something larger than himself. It was a moment of transformation, a turning point that would define the path of his journey in ways he could not yet fully understand. In the soft glow of the evening, surrounded by the gentle sounds of the village, the traveler sat in quiet reflection. He realized that a simple drink of water had led him to this extraordinary opportunity. The kindness of a stranger had opened doors, revealed new paths, and tested his character in ways he had never anticipated. He understood that his decision would require honesty, respect, and courage, but above all, it would require a heart willing to embrace the unknown. The next morning, the traveler woke with a sense of anticipation and nervousness. The offer the tribal leader had made the previous week was still fresh in his mind. It was a choice unlike any he had faced before, and he knew that his next actions could change the course of his life forever. Yes. He stepped outside his small resting place, greeted by the soft light of the early sun, and saw the daughters moving gracefully among the huts, carrying out their morning chores. There was a quiet strength in their movements, a harmony with the rhythm of the village that spoke of years of training, patience, and discipline. The leader approached him, speaking in a calm, steady voice. "Bal, today you will spend time with my daughters. Observe, learn, and understand. You will see who they are, not just in their beauty, but in their hearts and minds." The traveler nodded, his curiosity growing, though he could not deny the nervous excitement that stirred within him. He had spent time learning about the village, but now he would begin to understand the lives of those he had been invited to join in a more personal way. As the morning progressed, the traveler accompanied the daughters through their daily routines. They began by tending a small garden,
selecting vegetables and herbs with care and precision. The traveler observed their attention to detail and their gentle way of handling the plants. They explained the importance of each plant, not just for sustenance, but for healing and daily life. The traveler asked questions, eager to learn, and the daughters answered patiently, showing both knowledge and kindness. After working in the garden, they helped in the preparation of the morning meal. The traveler watched closely as they combined ingredients, carefully measuring and mixing. They laughed together softly when the traveler made a small mistake, spilling a handful of flour, yet their laughter was never mocking, only gentle, encouraging him to try again. Breaths. He felt a warmth in their presence, a sense that he was being welcomed into their world not just as a guest, but as someone who could belong. As they worked, the daughters spoke of their dreams and hopes.
The elder daughter dreamed of traveling beyond the village one day, to see the world her father had told her about in stories. The younger daughter loved the village deeply, wanting to continue its traditions and ensure the community thrived.
The traveler listened carefully, impressed by their dedication and the balance of their personalities. He realized that the leader's offer was not merely about marriage. It was about joining a life rich in purpose, culture, and connection. The day continued with various tasks around the village. The daughters showed him how to help carry water from the well, how to care for the animals, and how to assist in simple repairs around the huts. At first, the traveler was clumsy, his city-bred strength and skills not yet suited to this rural, hands-on life. Yet, the daughters encouraged him patiently, guiding him without judgment. He learned quickly, his respect for their intelligence and patience growing with each passing hour. Throughout the day, the traveler noticed subtle lessons embedded in every task. The daughters emphasized cooperation, respect for the land, and understanding the needs of the community. They spoke of patience, not as a mere word, but as a principle that guided their every action. The traveler reflected on his own life, realizing how much he had taken for granted the small comforts and conveniences that the village did without. Every act in this village, however simple, was meaningful, and every interaction carried significance. Bert. As the sun climbed higher, the leader approached again, observing the traveler's interactions. The daughters greeted him respectfully, showing deference to their father, yet moving with a quiet confidence that came from years of learning and experience. The traveler felt both admiration and humility. He understood that any decision he made would not only affect him, but also these remarkable young women, whose lives were closely intertwined with their father and the tribe's traditions. By midday, the daughters had taken him to meet other villagers more closely. They introduced him to elders who taught the history of the tribe, the customs passed down through generations, and the importance of loyalty and respect. The traveler listened intently, asking questions, showing that he was eager to understand not just the practical aspects of life in the village, but the deeper values that guided it. The elders watched him carefully, seeing that his heart was sincere, that he was not just learning for himself but trying to understand and honor their way of life. In the afternoon, the daughters guided the traveler through more personal activities. They shared stories of their childhood, the lessons their father had taught them, and the ways they had learned to balance responsibility with kindness. The traveler found himself increasingly drawn to their sincerity and intelligence. He realized that the leader's offer was not just about tradition or appearance. It was about joining a family that valued integrity, compassion, and understanding above all else. There were moments of laughter and lightheartedness, too. The traveler tried to help with weaving baskets, spilling straw and laughing at his clumsiness. The daughters joined in, showing patience and humor, creating a sense of camaraderie. It was in these moments that he saw their true character, not only as hard-working and intelligent individuals, but as warm, kind, and understanding people. He began to feel a genuine connection, a bond built on mutual respect and shared experiences. As evening approached, the traveler sat under the large tree in the village center with the daughters and the leader. The leader asked him gently about his thoughts and feelings regarding the offer. The traveler spoke honestly, expressing both honor and hesitation. He admitted the challenge of such a decision. the weight of responsibility, and the need to fully understand the lives of those involved. The leader listened without judgment, nodding in understanding.
"This is why we spend time together,"
He said, "Bo, to learn, to observe, and to reflect. Only then can a decision be made with clarity and honesty." That night, the traveler found a quiet spot on the edge of the village to reflect on all he had experienced. The day had been filled with work, learning, laughter, and observation. Breaths. He thought about the daughters, their beauty, yes, but more importantly, their intelligence, kindness, and dedication. He considered the leader's trust, the generosity of the villagers, and the life he might lead if he chose to accept the offer. It was overwhelming, yet there was also a sense of possibility, of a new chapter opening before him.
Over the following days, the traveler continued to spend time learning and observing.
He participated in communal meals, helped care for animals, and joined in discussions about the village's needs and customs.
The daughters guided him through each activity, always encouraging patience, respect, and thoughtfulness.
The traveler grew stronger, more confident, and more deeply connected to the village. With each passing day, he felt the bond between himself, the daughters, and the community deepen, though the weight of the ultimate decision remained heavy on his mind. The leader, ever observant, spoke to the traveler privately at times, sharing wisdom about the responsibilities of joining a family and community in this culture.
He emphasized that marriage here was not merely personal. It was about honor, trust.
The traveler absorbed each word, understanding that the choice before him required not just desire or attraction, but a deep commitment to values, respect, and integrity. One afternoon, the traveler walked with the daughters to a nearby hill, overlooking the village and the surrounding desert. The view was breathtaking, the land stretching endlessly beneath the golden sun. The daughter spoke of the importance of the land, of how every tree, every stream, and every path held meaning. The traveler listened, realizing how deeply their lives were connected to this place and to each other. He began to see that accepting the offer would mean embracing not just two individuals, but an entire way of life, a culture, and a community. By the end of the week, the traveler had come to appreciate the depth of the decision he faced. He had learned about the daughters' personalities, their hopes, and their dreams. He had witnessed their dedication to family and community, their intelligence and their kindness. He had experienced the rhythm of village life, the values that guided every action, and the strength of bonds formed through respect and trust. He understood that this decision was not simple, but it was meaningful, and it demanded reflection, honesty, and courage.
As night fell once more, the traveler sat quietly beneath the stars, reflecting on all that he had seen, learned, and felt.
The desert had brought him to this village, the leader had welcomed him, and the daughters had shown him a life he could never have imagined. He felt the weight of responsibility, but also a sense of hope, of opportunity, and of connection. Bend. He knew that the next step would require careful thought, a clear heart, and the courage to embrace the unknown. In those quiet hours, surrounded by the gentle sounds of the village, the traveler realized that he had already grown in ways he could not have predicted. He had learned patience, respect, and understanding. He had discovered the value of community, the depth of human kindness, and the beauty of living in harmony with others. Breaths. And he knew that whatever decision he made, it would shape not just his life, but the lives of those who had welcomed him so completely into their world. The morning sun rose slowly over the desert horizon, casting a soft golden light over the village. The traveler woke with a mixture of nervousness and determination. Today would be the day he had to make a decision, one that could change the course of his life forever. The past days had been filled with learning, observation, and reflection. He had spent time with the daughters, the villagers, and the tribal leader, absorbing everything he could about their customs, their values, and their way of life. Yet the choice still felt enormous, and he knew that he could not rush it. After a simple breakfast, the tribal leader approached the traveler with a calm, steady presence. "The time has come," he said gently. You have spent time with my daughters, observed our ways, and reflected on your journey. Now, the decision is yours.
Whatever you choose, speak honestly, and we will honor it. The traveler nodded, feeling a combination of fear, respect, and gratitude.
He knew that honesty was the most important thing in this moment, for it would determine not only his own path, but also the future of the daughters and the trust of the entire village. He asked the leader if he could spend a few more hours alone with the daughters before giving his answer. The leader agreed, understanding that such a decision required careful thought.
The traveler approached the daughters with a nervous smile. "I would like to speak with you both," he said softly. "I need to understand your feelings and thoughts before I decide." They nodded, their expressions calm and patient, showing that they understood the gravity of the situation. The three of them walked to a quiet spot near the edge of the village, where the sand met a gentle rise in the terrain. From there, they could see the entire village below, the huts, the gardens, and the people moving about, living their lives in harmony. The daughters began to speak, sharing their thoughts about the traveler, the offer, and their hopes for the future. The elder daughter spoke first.
"I admire your courage and your respect for our people," she said. "You have shown patience, kindness, and understanding. I believe you could become a part of our world, not just as a husband, but as someone who shares in our values." The younger daughter added, "I have seen your sincerity and your willingness to learn.
You have not just observed us, but you have respected our lives and our community. That is more important than anything else. Whatever you decide, we will respect your honesty." The traveler listened carefully, deeply moved by their words. Breaths. He realized that this offer was not merely about marriage. It was about joining a life filled with meaning, connection, and responsibility.
It was about trust, respect, and shared values, not just feelings of attraction.
He spent the next few hours walking with the daughters, discussing their dreams, their experiences, and their perspectives on life. He shared his own thoughts, fears, and hopes, speaking openly and honestly. Birds. The daughters listened attentively, responding with insight and empathy. Through these conversations, the traveler understood more fully what it would mean to accept the offer. A life intertwined with theirs, full of responsibility, shared work, and mutual respect.
Base. It was a life different from anything he had known, but one that held incredible opportunity for growth, understanding, and connection.
As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the village, the traveler felt a sense of clarity beginning to form within him. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, the long walk through the desert, the thirst that had driven him to the village, and the kindness of the tribal leader. He thought about the lessons he had learned over the past days, the importance of humility, patience, respect, and the value of community. And he thought about the daughters, their intelligence, kindness, and strength. He realized that this decision was not just about himself, but about joining something larger than his own life. With a deep breath, he approached the tribal leader once more. The village had gathered quietly, aware that a significant decision was about to be made. The leader looked at him with calm, steady eyes, a small smile of encouragement on his face. "Have you made your choice?" he asked gently. The traveler nodded, feeling a mixture of nervousness and determination.
"I have," he said clearly, his voice steady. "I am honored by your offer, and I wish to accept. I will embrace the responsibilities, the customs, and the life of this village. I will do my best to live with honesty, respect, and integrity, and to honor both of your daughters and the community that has welcomed me."
The leader's smile widened, a look of satisfaction and pride crossing his face. The villagers murmured quietly, sharing in the traveler's joy and anticipation. The daughters stepped forward, their expressions calm yet filled with warmth. They accepted his words with grace, recognizing the sincerity in his voice and the thoughtfulness of his decision. There was a sense of relief, joy, and mutual understanding that filled the space between them. The traveler felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the acceptance, but for the lessons, trust, and guidance that had led him to this moment.
That evening, the village held a small ceremony to welcome the traveler into their community. It was simple, but full of meaning.
The leader spoke to the villagers about the traveler's journey, the qualities that had earned their respect, and the commitment he was making. The villagers cheered softly, clapped, and expressed their goodwill. The traveler felt a profound sense of belonging, understanding that he was now part of a life and community that valued character, honor, and connection above all else. Over the following days, the traveler continued to learn and adjust to his new life. He worked alongside the daughters and other villagers, contributing to daily tasks, learning traditional skills, and deepening his understanding of the community's values. He felt a growing sense of fulfillment, seeing how his efforts were appreciated and how his presence strengthened the bonds within the village. Each day brought new lessons, new experiences, and new opportunities to grow, both personally and as part of the community. The daughters proved to be wonderful guides, helping him navigate the responsibilities of his new life while also sharing laughter, conversation, and friendship. The traveler discovered a deep respect for their intelligence, patience, and grace. He also realized that marriage in this culture was not just about romantic love. It was about partnership, mutual respect, and shared responsibility. He embraced this understanding fully, striving to be not only a husband but a valued member of the community. Weeks turned into months, and the traveler began to feel completely integrated into the life of the village. The desert, which had once seemed harsh and unforgiving, now felt like home. The villagers had welcomed him as one of their own, and he had formed bonds that would last a lifetime. The daughters, with their kindness, wisdom, and strength, had become close companions, guiding him through challenges and celebrating successes. The traveler realized that what had begun as a desperate search for water had transformed into a life rich with purpose, connection, and meaning.
At night, he would often sit under the stars, reflecting on his journey.
But he thought about the long, lonely walk through the desert, the exhaustion and thirst that had brought him to the village, and the simple act of receiving water from the tribal leader. That small moment had led to everything: the friendships, the lessons, and the life-altering offer he had accepted. He felt gratitude for the kindness of strangers, the wisdom of the leader, and the trust and guidance of the daughters. Every decision, every moment had led him to this new beginning. The traveler understood that life in the village was not always easy. There were challenges, responsibilities, and moments of difficulty. But he also knew that he had gained something far greater: a community that valued honesty, respect, and compassion, a family that would support him, and a life filled with meaning, purpose, and connection. The lessons he had learned would stay with him forever, shaping the person he was and the life he would lead. In the quiet evenings, as he helped the daughters with household tasks or walked through the gardens, the traveler felt a sense of peace he had never known. He had found belonging, acceptance, and purpose. He had discovered that true generosity, wisdom, and kindness could open doors to unimaginable opportunities. And he had learned that sometimes the simplest acts, like offering water to a stranger, could change the course of life forever. As the days passed, the traveler became an integral part of the village. He worked, learned, and lived alongside the people who had welcomed him. He shared stories of his journey, helped teach younger villagers about the world beyond their lands, and participated fully in community life. The daughters continued to guide and support him, and together they built a life based on mutual respect, understanding, and care. The tribal leader watched with quiet pride, knowing that his judgment had been wise, and that the traveler had proven himself worthy of trust and honor. And so, the traveler's journey, which had begun with exhaustion, thirst, and uncertainty, ended in belonging, purpose, and connection.
What had started as a simple need for water became a story of trust, respect, and life-altering opportunity.
The traveler had embraced the unknown, honored the community's values, and accepted the responsibilities of his new life. He had learned that kindness, patience, and humility could open doors to a future far richer and more meaningful than he could have imagined. Under the vast desert sky, surrounded by people who had become his family, and with the daughters by his side, the traveler knew that he had found more than just a place to rest or survive. He had found a home, a community, and a life filled with meaning. And he understood that every moment, every choice, and every act of kindness along the way had led him to this extraordinary and unforgettable chapter of his life.